Hello. Hi. Oh God, I got a hi. Thank you. This is wonderful. There's a lot of people here to kind of listen to me, which is awesome because this was actually just something that some friends were doing, and it was something I got really passionate about, and I started spending a lot of time thinking about it. And so I'm delighted you're kind of all here to see this. So my name's Nick Button-Brown. The idea for this session came from a friend of mine was writing a book about different career structures. And I ended up having a chat to her, and my half-hour chat became a 3-hour chat, which went over 2 days, which became about the games industry and how the games industry is so different to all the other industries around, and it was all really exciting, and it was like, oh. So I'm really excited, aren't I? Thank you for coming along, and thank you for listening to this talk. What she did when she was talking was she presented this idea to me of a career lattice. Has anybody heard the term career lattice before? Yeah, a couple of people, okay. And it did this thing where it almost made sense of the things that I'd done. It kind of gave, I actually understood, I hadn't done it deliberately, but all of a sudden it was like, yeah, okay, that kind of, I wasn't completely insane in the decisions that I made. But to be honest, I do need to start with a disclaimer. I didn't know this theory, I didn't know this structure when I started crafting my career, and generally my career choices have been on the basis of opportunism, self-confidence and whim, and can be looked at best as a series of ill-conceived and accidental events. But I'm going to talk today about the idea of career lattice, and I'm going to explain some of the benefits and then look at a little bit on how to build it. Okay, I've got to start with my own career. I think that's a reasonable place to look. And I did, when I thought about this speech, I forgot that this was going to be streamed and would be on YouTube. So I have various humiliating pictures of me. I was brought up in a theatre family. I was brought up in a theatre family in the 70s and 80s, which results in some horrendous fashion faux pas. And trust me, nobody can carry off a gold lame jumpsuit at the age of 14. I was one of Ken Dodd's Diddy men. Prizes for seeing which one I was. Anybody get it? I'm the guy dressed as the British police officer on the front on the right. I appeared in pantomimes every year. But at the same time, I was kind of really good at maths. Okay, anybody guess this one? Yeah, okay, that one's a bit easier on the tall guy. I trained to be a dance teacher. I appeared regularly on a TV show, which must be one of the longest running low points of the televisual arts, called The Hitman and Her. It was terrible. It ran between 2 and 4 on a Saturday night, and nobody ever watched it sober. I joined a boy band. I used to perform alongside Take That. Way before they were famous, when they were just kind of getting started. But still, Take That. I kind of gave that up to go to study maths at Oxford. The last thing I did before I went to university was I auditioned for a family soap, a daytime family soap. And I got down to the last 2, and I lost out. Because I lost out, I went to university. The guy I lost out to was Jude Law. So I was that close to being Jude Law. Yeah, that close. What I ended up doing was I became an accountant. I became an accountant because I didn't really know what to do. I became an accountant because they were the people hiring when I left university and nobody else was. I realized I wasn't a very good accountant because I thought anything under 7 figures was a rounding error. And so perhaps it was best for me to move on. I was lucky enough not to get hired in the record industry, which was what I was trying to get into, and ended up going into games, which was my passion, but it just didn't seem like a proper career. I then joined EA. I joined EA as an accountant, and I ended up moving across and helping set up EA Partners. So in EA Partners, I worked with DICE, and with a kind of insane German developer that was about to launch an FPS up against Doom 3. That was Far Cry. I ended up liking them so much, and I love the insanity. I joined them, spent 5 years there. I was managing their studios. We had 700 people working on games. I then left that to join an insane startup in England, which was developing distributed servers, and it was living in a Silicon Valley world. And I can assure you that Silicon Valley is a documentary, not a comedy. From that, I was elected onto the board of trustees at BAFTA. I'm now head of games at BAFTA. I did my absolute passion project, which was a VR game with a film studio, and I loved it, and it got killed. From there, I now work with a few different companies, including Sensible Objects, which is a wonderful physical, digital, smart toy. Do we have Alex in? No, OK. All right, so the career ladder. I didn't really follow a traditional career ladder. I think that's kind of clear. The career ladder assumes everybody's going to progress upwards. It assumes they're getting better at what they're doing, that the industry you're in is the same in 20 years as it was 20 years ago. Ultimately, this is based on the kind of world where you're loyal to one company. Games industry, we're definitely not spending. There are a few, but most people don't spend all their lives at one company. And the problem is it doesn't work so well if people are different. Industries live and die very quickly, and you have to evolve to compete. But the way you do, you change jobs, or you find better ways of doing something, or the new tech exists and makes the way that you were working before redundant. And to be honest, we don't want to have the same jobs as anybody else anymore. We want to have our own jobs. We want to have we want to do something which is individual to us. So, the career ladder, I really can't read that on my screen. It relies on a traditional hierarchy. It relies on this kind of singular path upwards. It relies on low workforce mobility, and your loyalty is based on promotion and salary. Which takes me to the idea of the career lattice. It's a better model for today's flexible and fast-changing work markets, where you need to be self-reliant and agile. Ultimately, you should set about acquiring skills that are strategic to what you want to do, or what you might want to do, as well as dealing with the skills, the lack of which is a career blocker. Everybody know what a career blocker is? If you don't know it, you've probably got one. It's a skill that stops you progressing. You need to build the experiences that you can base future work and decisions on. You need to get the technical skills, of course, but really importantly is you need the networks. You need the networks of people that will help you. This is not necessarily to get another job, but people can give you advice, people that can give you support. So, what does the career lattice work better for? It's more conducive to this flatter, more matrix structure we have within games. You can have multiple paths. You can choose your own route. And it adjusts as your needs change over time. It relies on high workforce mobility. And your loyalty is based on opportunities. Rather than being tied to something, it's based on a new opportunity that allows you to do something else. So, what's the theory? The career lattice is a more creative way to look at your career. It's a diagonal framework that braids lateral experiences, adjacent skill acquisition, and peer networking. Don't worry, I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. It allows you to move to a variety of positions which you are now able to do because you have gathered these skills. It's about evolution, it's about evolving, it's about changing, and it allows you to grow all the time. You're always growing, you're always finding some new skill, always finding some way to improve yourself. Okay, so you saw what I did. What did I get from my career lattice? I worked on The Hitman and Her. It taught me about confidence. It taught me about the power that confidence has. It also gave me a far too detailed working understanding of hot pants. Working in a boy band. Okay, I'm not being flippant here. Working in a boy band was all about egos, managing fragile egos. I was the one that learned to manage everybody else's egos. That's probably the greatest lesson you can ever learn, is how to manage other people's egos. Studying maths taught me how to think laterally and kind of pick up problem solving. Being at IDOS taught me the fallacy of success. Do you know what the fallacy of success is? The idea that because you've been successful, you knew what you were doing. It's great. They were really successful. It was all fantastic. We're going to carry on doing the same thing. Then they went bust 3 times, got bought out. It is a fallacy. Often, you're just lucky. You can do good things, and you can make yourself lucky, but you can't rely on the luck. I did my MBA. It taught me how to think differently. It really taught me how to work on my people skills as well. Most people don't do an MBA for that, but actually the way of thinking how I interact with a team, the way of constructing teams. Working with EA partners taught me about managing relationships. I was working with developers, great developers around the world. How are you doing that remotely? How are you doing it face to face? Crytek taught me to make a game from end to end. That's a big thing. I covered every part of making a game. Improbable taught me just working with a bunch of really, really smart people. That I was used to being one of the smartest people in the room. I go there and, well, yeah, I'm still one of the smartest people in the room. Actually, sensible objects is an interesting one because it's taught me about making my own decisions. Every other company, I've had somebody else there and, I want to do this. No, you can't do that. Oh, well, if I'd done that, it would have been fantastic. And I go to the smaller company, I want to do this. And everybody's looking at me going, all right then. I'm like, oh, okay. What if I get it wrong? That's what you have to learn. So, what would be a good Lattice role? You want access to best practices. You want to learn things that you can take and kind of carry on using for many years. You want to add technical skills. You want to add life skills. I'm going to talk about life skills are really important. Life skills are the most important thing you can learn within a Lattice. You want to learn how to make decisions. And I mentioned it before, you want networks. Networks make everything work. So, best practices. Can you work with an expert? How would you find a job that would help you with best practices? Who are the people that do what you're interested in the best? Can you get to them? Can you learn from them? Can you find a well-run company? Can you do things well in all areas of their business? Or could you look at a completely different industry? You're really interested in creativity. Well, God, go and spend a year at Pixar. You're going to learn a huge amount about creativity. But maybe you're really interested in commerce. Can you work really closely with Amazon? They do so many wonderful things. This one's the most dangerous. Work with people who don't agree with you. You learn so much from them, but it can really piss you off. I've done this. It's difficult. I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't do it again. But I definitely learned a lot. Ultimately, you've got to think creatively and don't necessarily take the easy option. The easy option is always the one in front of you. But actually, sometimes you need to go off and do something else. Life skills. Technical skills. You do need to pick up technical skills, but it's not just the technical skills that make you a great artist. Actually, there are a bunch of technical skills that may help you and do other things. Just understanding project management is a wonderful thing. Anybody that understands project management is so much stronger. Theoretical science, the background of doing this. You want to improve your existing skills, but don't just focus on your best skills. You want to make sure that your worst skills aren't stopping you from developing. That's back to the career blockers idea. You can't make your worst skills into your best skills, but you can make them not that bad. Stop at not that bad. Not that bad's okay. So life skills. This is really important to me. You can learn to work in a rapidly changing situation. It's kind of hard if you don't know what you're going to be doing from day to day. You come in and everything's changed again, and you come back the next week and everything's changed again. You've got to learn coping mechanisms to deal with that. Influencing skills, hugely important. How you're managing internal relationships and external relationships. They're all the same. They're just relationships. But if you can get people to come along with you without having to shout at them, that's pretty powerful. I mean, you need to deal with lots of different kinds of people. If you've always been an artist, that's great. You talk to lots of artists, but you kind of got to learn how to negotiate with a coder that's going to help you do the thing that you really want to do, that's going to make the difference, that's going to make your work fantastic. And you can go with management skills or leadership skills. They're two different kind of things. You choose whether you want to be a manager, you choose whether you want to be a leader, but you do need to build those skills. And dealing with difficult people. Difficult people are hard. One of my worst ever times at work was the first time I fired somebody. Destroyed me. Got easier after that. I'm not certain that's a good thing. Yeah. God, I'm going a bit dark now. Making decisions. There's a theory of decision-making called thin slicing. Thin slicing says that decisions made quickly by an experienced person are generally better than decisions made by the same person after weighing up all the evidence and balancing it out and arguing it out in their heads. It's the epitome of the gut instinct. Now, to make that work, you have to have those experiences. You have to have seen the situations before. So if you can start to build those experiences, then you're going to be much better at doing that. You're going to be much more efficient at it, and you don't have to do the agonizing. If anybody's interested in that, there's a bunch of stuff about thin slicing. It's really, it's subconscious processing. You need to learn how to analyze the situations. You need to build cases. You need to build arguments. You need to construct them for a variety of different people, not just people who know what you're doing, people that have no idea what you're doing. You need to learn to pitch. Everybody needs to pitch, not just people that are talking to other companies. You need to pitch. You need to pitch the work that you're doing because you need to tell people how awesome it is. You need to recommend the decisions, but again, I kind of came back to this. You need to learn how to implement your own decisions. It's really easy to say, you should have done this, until the moment where you kind of go, oh, I have done this. And you get it wrong. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. Networking. Networking within the company. Most people, everybody here wants to network. So whenever you have a few minutes, talk to somebody. Before you leave here, talk to the person that's sitting next to you, find out their name. You never know. It might be somebody really cool. But working for your networks is very different to that. You take a job because it gives you great relationships with talented people. And over time, those people move into different companies and do different things. Never piss off people in your company. I was lucky enough to work at EA in the kind of the early 2000s, which is the most fantastic network of people scattered all over the industry in very senior positions, partially because most people earned quite a lot on share options and were able to make easier choices. Build that group of people. Asking someone for a favor is actually more powerful than offering someone a favor. Don't do it the first time you meet somebody. That's just creepy. So that's just so clear, so not everybody comes at the end and asks me for a favor. There is research that shows that asking someone for a favor binds them much closer to you than doing something for them. That's kind of counterintuitive, but it works. Build that group of people. The best kind of connections are the people that get things done. What you want to be is one of the people that gets things done. That would be great. But get to know the people that get things done. To be honest, in a big company, there's not always that many people that do get things done. Don't be an arse. We all know them. Because we're talking about the power of networks, if you're an arse, then everybody knows you're an arse, and everybody's going to tell everybody else you're an arse. It's really difficult to come back. I know some people who are actually genuinely nice people, but they messed up, and it followed them around for kind of 10 years. One interesting thing, beware the whiz kid syndrome. So don't just mix with smart young people. You need networks of other people that have done other things, that can open doors, that have experience, that can do other things. And similarly, don't not mix with smart young people. if you're an older person, just make sure you're getting some of that energy and you're seeing different people. Don't just mix with people like you. I've spent too much time talking to games people. I've been lucky enough in the last week I was at a think tank, which was kind of film and government and military, and it was wonderful. I got to sit talking to the lady that proved that Einstein's theory of gravitational waves was actually correct, when Einstein himself didn't think it was provable. Admittedly, I'm talking to them, and then I'm kind of going, yeah, I make games. We make things run around and stuff. But, yeah, still, it was awesome. I'm going to start talking about a couple of examples now. When I started this session, what I was going to do was pick the kind of the great and the good of the games industry and say, let's have a look at how they developed their careers and the skills they picked up as it went along. It wasn't really working. And as I was walking around the show, people were seeing my speaker's badge and coming up to me and going, what are you talking about? And I kind of talk to them and they go, oh yeah, no, that kind of, yeah. And what I'm instead going to talk about is those stories, people that came up to me. Clive Downey is CMO at Unity. He was a rising star at EA. He was stratospheric. Everybody loved him. But he was interested in marketing. And fairly early on, he decided to leave EA and go to Mattel. Because, EA was a product-led company. Mattel is a marketing-led company. And he went off. He learned a bunch of best practices. 2 years later, he went back to EA. That set him up. If you ask him, that was the most important thing he ever did. I bumped into a guy yesterday, Ujin Harton, and he'd just come into the games industry, but the job that he'd come into gave him massive amounts of exposure to loads of different things. He got to work in loads of different areas really quickly. And so he got up to speed on what the games industry was. He saw loads of people, he interacted with loads of people, he did loads of different things. I'm going to ask for a speaker from the audience. So Oliver is one of the smartest people I've ever worked with. In fact, Oliver, do you want to stand up and just share some of your insights?
Thanks, Nick. That's also a terrible introduction.
I know, I did that deliberately. Did you like it?
I did like it, thank you. You mentioned networking alone can be a role. So I spent a decade as a British diplomat and oftentimes got billed, because I was young, as being the guy leading on innovation and creativity, which being in this room is obviously a bit rich. So decided instead to leave for a bit and go into Improbable, where Nick and I met. And that was about suddenly being not the guy known for innovation and creativity, but the guy arguing for paperwork, writing things down, and a bit of process, which was at times galling, but a necessary different experience. And Nick also put up their new skills, new experiences, new abilities, new networks. From my experience of jumping from academia to government, now into tech, each of those jobs may not give you some output from all of those four categories. So certainly my skills were developed with the British Army. Most of my abilities were developed in the Foreign Office. The experiences I've had that have been much more diverse have been in this role. So in a tech startup, learning how to report to people who are much younger than me, when I've only ever reported to old white men. And that's a challenge, because they may be phenomenally intelligent, but they're often inexperienced and perhaps immature. So stuff I took for granted, I had to suddenly redress. Similarly, the types of experiences that jobs in the Foreign Office prepare you for are wildly different to the experiences in a tech startup. So being shot at or blown up in Afghanistan is an episodic trauma. It's really shit for a really short period of time. Whereas being in a young tech startup is a persistent low level of constant anxiety. And that's something that it's really difficult to learn how to control. And you can only really do it with phenomenal people around you. And Nick was certainly one of those strong supporters.
I mean, the interesting thing is Ollie could always kill you in a room, because you kind of, oh no, I had a really hard day. And he'd like, yeah, when I was in this other job, the Jeep next to me blew up and everybody died. Okay, yeah, that's a bad day. Thank you, Ollie. My CEO at my current company working on this, he first of all did an experiential games, and he built a team that was used to being able to prototype incredibly fast because that's all he had. He took that to then make this new company, which is Smart Toys. He built a set of experiences that made him able to do the next thing. So a modern career is just a collection of skills. Your career lattice is a slightly different way of looking at the career progression. But to remind you, it's about collecting varieties of experiences. It's about picking up and being able to evidence that kind of wide variety of skills. And it's about building the useful networks. Those are the three things. So every job that you look at, you should be able to tick huge numbers of things in those boxes. And I can't not just throw in a couple of random things. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You can step sideways, you can step down, you can do something different, you can take a risk. Most of you in here have got loads of years to play with. Unfortunately, I'm reaching the stage where I'm counting down the number of games I've got left. That's a terrible thing. I'm less than double digits now. You've got to have, it is about repetition. It's about doing things better and better. It's not the first time you do something. You've got to have endurance. You've got to recognize that failure is learning. And this is the one thing, if I can ever tell you, don't work with arseholes. It's hard work, and they're arseholes. And so if it isn't working out, do a different job. As long as you don't do it every 6 months, nobody's going to look at that badly because you're in an interview and you kind of go, yeah, it just wasn't very good. So got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to throw it out for questions. Anybody got any questions? Or anybody want to share any of their own experiences, what they got from a job? Yeah, please.
I served in the United States Army from 2010, right after I graduated high school, until 2015. And one of the major skills I got was not only dealing with people all over the chain of command, whether that's an officer or a sergeant. That kind of carried over into project management. And even though I turned that career into being an artist, that project management skill carried over, and I'm able to run projects from the ground up, and that's been pretty beneficial.
Yeah, that's kind of a great skill, and that skill will do whatever job you do. That's a great skill to have. Anybody else got a question or want to throw something out? Yeah.
So I'm an academic, so much like you having that kind of background, and I'm struck by your discussion about the career lattice, about how much that reflects a very traditional liberal arts education. And I'm wondering if you have any comments about that in terms of preparing people for that sort of mentality, right, in universities or other sorts of higher education, so that we don't railroad people into thinking that it's just the latter.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Not something I particularly thought about, but what you want to do is try and create that kind of lattice structure within the university, the projects that you're doing, getting people jumping between projects, taking different roles. It's the one time in your life when you can do that, when you're not risking too much by doing that. So you always just want to kick people to do something different. And if they're doing the same thing again and again, just try and stop them. That's a really good question. That's really interesting. And you're right, it's a kind of liberal mentality here as well. But we're in games, Okay. Go on. I think we've got time for one more.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
When you're about to make a career transition, what's the best way to convince other people that your past skills are transferable if they're from a different part of the industry that isn't directly applicable to the job you're looking for?
That's a hard one. In a lot of cases, I've done that within companies. So because they have an understanding for you, often they'll let you move around. I did that a lot within EA. I did a lot of different things at EA. It's not just about, we're talking about jobs, but it's actually about the other things you're doing around it. It's the things you're supporting. It's the hobbies that you've got. I work with Ollie on the Near Future Forum, which is, that's a networking thing, but that allows me to take a certain set of skills, and it's not necessarily my job that's taking me to the next one. It's the other things that I'm doing. So if you can kind of package it up and do that, you use the other things that you're doing to provide that transition as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I wasn't quite certain whether I could get away with a Trump joke. So I looked at Trump's career lattice. And basically everything always told him how awesome he was. There we go. Have I got away with a Trump joke? Yeah, all right. We'll see. Too soon? Is it too soon? Sorry, I'm a Brit. We're just laughing about Brexit because that's hilarious. Anyway, look, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you coming along. Please fill in the feedback. If you've got any questions, I'm hanging around. Thank you.